This week on Leader Tribe, we're talking about an area that I have seen mess up more executive careers and hold people back than almost any other area. We're talking about the F word. Harvard Business Review dedicated an entire issue to it, and I have new research from Stanford University and Wharton as well. This week we're talking about the F word. Oh, the word? Forgiveness.
You're listening to Leader Tribe, where leaders are made daily, but never in a day. We're talking skills that are relevant, researched, and ready for action. Apply these and you will grow. Here's your daily dose of growth with Dr. Rob McClellan.
Hello, Leader Tribe. I hope you're doing fantastic today. I am. This is Dr. Rob with you. It's another daily dose of growth. This week we are dedicating time to the issue of forgiveness. You think forgiveness? Hey, Rob, this is a leadership podcast. Yes, you're right. And that's why we have to talk about it, because it actually derails us. This is something so significant that Harvard, Stanford, and Wharton have all dedicated significant time to it. The Stanford Forgiveness Project is amazing. You think, why is that? Well, let me start off with this little quote from an article in Harvard Business Review. When you cannot forgive the people who have hurt you, these feelings become mental poison that destroys the system from within. As numerous studies have shown, hatred, spite, bitterness, and vindictiveness create fertile ground for stress disorders, negatively affecting your immune system. And an unforgiving attitude is correlated to depression, anxiety, hostility, neuroticism, and associated with premature death. Hey, I want to talk to you about one of my mentors in grad school. He's the first one that brought this to my attention. He was working with a group of us, kind of mentoring us, and he said, I have seen this poison more lives and careers than just about anything else. And we're like, really? What's the deal with that? And he goes, I talked to somebody recently. I was asked to go and spend some time with some leaders in an organization, and I did. And one of the things that they really wanted me to do was see if I could sit down with this one, happened in this case to be a female executive, to help her kind of process through some things. So I get time with her, and she's just spewing out all of this hurt and this pain, and this isn't fair, and I was mistreated, and I can't believe this happened this way. And so he's listening to it and he goes, oh my goodness, she was really hurt. It was unfair. He said, exactly when did this happen? It had happened over 2 decades before that time. And she was still living with that pain every day. Now granted, that's an extreme case, but can't all of us think back to times in our life when we were treated wrong, when we were treated unfairly, and we think, man, that was so unfair. Even if it's not this vindictiveness or of I'm going to get them back someday, still it's that pain that we carry and think, well, that's not fair. I'm not going to do that to anyone else. And you still give mental energy to that thing that's going on the inside. It actually changes the way that your brain works, your mental makeup. It makes you a different person. As a matter of fact, that article in Harvard Business Review continues saying, those who cannot forgive will never be the kinds of leaders that get the best out of their followers. The ability to forgive is an essential capability for any leader wishing to make a difference. Hey friends, as leaders, as a fellow leader of yours, I want to come alongside and let you know I have seen a lot of mistakes made in this area. What do you mean by that, Dr. Rob? Well, here it is. One thing that I've seen over and over again is people go like, nope, no big deal. I've forgiven them. I've forgotten all about it. I've moved on. Yet you can still hear them bring it up once in a while. I was talking with an executive once. I was on a long plane flight next to this guy, and we kind of got into a really good conversation. And this guy kept telling me about this unfair thing that happened to him. And he kept telling me, but you know what? That's in the past, and I've forgotten all about it. He wasn't saying I've forgotten all about it. That's not fair to him. What he was saying is, I've gotten over it. And so finally I stopped him and I said, can I just be real truthful with you for a moment? And he said, sure, that'd be great. And I said, you haven't gotten over it. He goes, no, yes, I have. And I said, no, you haven't. He goes, you don't even know me. I have gotten over it. And I said, I can guarantee you haven't. He goes, why would you say that? And I said, anyone on one plane flight who has to tell me 4 different times he's gotten over something, he hasn't gotten over it. And he goes, it hasn't been 4 different times. I said, you're right. It's been about 6. I was trying to give you a little break here. I said, you've still got some stuff in there. Let's talk about that for a little while. And as we got into it, he did have some stuff in there. And thankfully, I'm going to believe that our conversation helped move him along a little bit. Now, I'm not a counselor. I'm not the son of a counselor. I'm not a psychotherapist. I'm not a psychoanalyst. I have no degrees in anything in that area. I'm just telling you, when I work with executives and you start hearing some of this hurt and the pain that's coming out of their lives, you think, oh my goodness, there's something in there and they've never gotten over it. Well, Dr. Rob, how would you get over it? I mean, seriously, it was unfair. You were treated bad in the first place. And here's what I just need you to hear this with all of your heart and with all of your mind. Listen really carefully on this. Whatever you're doing, just kind of stop right now. Take in this next sentence. If you don't get over this thing in your life, you will not be your best. You will not be your best mom or dad. You will not be your best leader as a team. You will not be a better friend. It will affect you. And so you owe it to yourself. And here is the biggest issue of all. When people think, if I forgive them, then I'm letting them off the hook. Well, friends, I just got to tell you, things happen. For example, I know of a young lady who was assaulted when she was young, and she said, I will never forgive this person. Well, I guarantee you that person had forgotten about it over a decade ago. He was a jerk. He probably went on to assault other people. Hopefully by this time he's been found out and been arrested. But either way, he hadn't given it a second thought. It wasn't affecting. She's saying, I'm not letting him off the hook. He wasn't on the hook. He wasn't feeling bad about this. But she was the one paying the price every day. When you forgive somebody, it's not something you're doing for them. It's something that you're doing for yourself. You are taking the chains off of your heart. You're taking the chains off of your mind, off of your inner life. And you're saying, I've just got to let that go. I've got to put it down. And again, right now, I can just hear people going, Dr. Robbie, you don't understand the pain I've been through. And I just want to tell you, you're right. I don't. I have been through some really horrible stuff, but it might not even come close to the pain that you've been through. I don't mean to say I have been in any way. Here's what I do mean to say. You can get over it. Well, how would you do that? What steps would you take? Thankfully, some great research there. We're going to be talking about that. But I just want to leave you with this. There is a big gift with a big bow on it being put on a table in front of you. And when you look at the little tag on that gift, it has your name on it. That gift is just sitting there. It's a gift of truth. But you have to open it. You have to receive it in order to enjoy its benefits. Otherwise, the gift is just going to sit there and it's going to look pretty, but it's going to bring no lasting benefit to you. The truth is this: learning to forgive is a gift. It frees you from the bitterness and it sets you free to be the person, your very best self, the person that you are always meant to be. That's why we're going to talk about this. It will change you and it will change your leadership. Hey, this is Dr. Rob. We're going to get into this over the next couple of days. The one thing I'd love you to do at this point is every one of you, right now you're thinking of somebody like, man, they could really use this because they're still hurting over something. Would you do me a favor? Just go over to the podcast on iTunes or wherever you're listening to this and just forward this edition to them and say this might be worth listening to over the next couple of days. If you want to do me one more favor, and there's many of you who have said some really nice things, would you just also go over to iTunes and give me a rating? That would be fantastic. I really look forward to giving you some resources and helping the rest of the week. It's going to be a great week. Much love. I'm out. Hello, Leader Tribe. This is Dr. Rob. How in the world are you? Trust you're doing fantastic today. Hey, we are on the Tuesday edition of your Daily Dose of Growth. Actually, we're talking about the F word all week, and that is forgiveness. If you haven't listened to yesterday's podcast, it's only about 8 or 9 minutes. You'll want to listen to it to figure out why Harvard Business Review dedicated an entire episode to the subject of forgiveness. And then jump over to your best friend Google and put in Stanford University Forgiveness Project. Some of this research is just amazing, and we're going to get into that more on the Thursday edition. But today I want to talk about not just why it's so important, but what are some first steps that you can take. First, let me tell you a little story from my own life and why this is so personal to me. I went through a time in my life, it was probably about 20 years ago, where I was falsely accused of some things. And it was really, it was major. Some people were making major accusations. And just because they were going around people, they were telling people, he's already confessed. This is true. And here's the problem. I hadn't confessed and it wasn't true. But I was feeling really perplexed. It was really hurting. Here's the reason why. The things that I was being accused of, I knew they weren't true, but that doesn't mean I was innocent. There were other things I was guilty of. So I had guilt in my life. They just weren't shooting the arrows at the right places at that time. And so here I am going through this, wanting to defend myself. But as soon as I defend myself in one area, having all that guilt and feeling hypocritical in another area. You know what? Thankfully, I have a great wife who helped me work through that. And it took a while. It was so painful. It was so depressing, a really, really difficult time of life where eventually I got some counseling, but I really started to get some perspective on it as well. And as I began to research it, I found that this is of epidemic proportions and that the people who don't deal with it, they can never be the best leaders, the best spouses, the best friends that they want to be, because there's an internal poison that gets into them and they have this little root of bitterness that grows up. And if they're not careful, it starts eking its way out in some of the worst ways that you can imagine. As a matter of fact, what they show is unforgiveness. Guys and ladies, it affects them differently in their life. We'll look at that a little bit tomorrow. But today I just wanted to give you a little hope. And this is what I've put together is just a 2-step process that helps every leader. And it's not just every leader, a 2-step process that can help every single person as they deal with unforgiveness. The first step is you have to do one thing and ask one question. The thing you have to do is you grab a pad of paper and a pen. No cell phones, no electronics. Get alone. Get somewhere where you're comfortable. If it's me, I'm going to go out on our back deck and sit in a chair. Just have a pad of paper and a pen. And then ask yourself this question. You got to search your heart and say, is there any unforgiveness that's still lingering around the corners of my heart? Perhaps you haven't given a family member or a friend or an enemy or even yourself. I find it best, again, to not use electronic devices on this, just to have a pad of paper and then to start writing things down that come to your mind. Where is the area of my life where I need to extend forgiveness? Who was somebody who has hurt me that I've never totally released them from that and I need to forgive? And then that one follow-up question, you have to ask yourself, am I willing to do that? Am I willing to do so? So you write it down. Then when you see what's on the paper, you say, am I really willing to forgive them? That's step number 1. Step number 2, this is critical. You make a choice to forgive. You have to choose. I would 100% recommend you even say it out loud. I choose to forgive this person for doing this to me. And now think about this. Anytime you're forgiving somebody, they've offended you. They are the person who has done something wrong. This wasn't you. And so that person that did something wrong, if you forgive them, they're the ones who should be paying the price for their sin or their egregious act that they've committed. But you're the one who's willing to pay the price because you're not going to carry that around anymore. You're going to release them from it. And so you're paying the price for somebody else's mistake. And so you have to say, I choose to forgive my ex-boss for saying that in front of my coworkers and embarrassing me so in such a horrible way. But I'm not going to carry that around. I'm not going to hold it against them. I forgive that. I'm making that choice. And now I'm going to move on, because when it's a choice, it's going to come back later and you're like, well, did you really forgive him? And you need to be able to look yourself in the mirror or look somebody else in the eye and say, yes, I made a choice to forgive them. And that way you can leave it where it needs to be. Hey, when you choose to forgive, that's really where the magic happens. You choose to lay down that burden that you've been carrying around. If you need it, get counseling. I had some good counseling, but don't let somebody else's evil behavior cause you to carry around internal bitterness, because you're the one that it's going to hurt. You're the one who's going to become toxic on the inside, and then it's going to slowly and silently start seeping its way out of your life, and other people will notice that. Hey, my former boss, John Maxwell, someone once asked him, what's the hardest leadership assignment you ever had? And without hesitating, he answered, oh, that's easy. It's leading myself. And I could really identify with that. Hey, it's a lot easier to lead people or teams or other things than lead myself sometimes. But this applies to the area we're talking about today, and that's forgiveness. Often the hardest person to forgive is to forgive ourselves, because we know that we've done wrong, we've hurt other people, and we're carrying around that guilt. But until we can even look in the mirror and say, I just choose to forgive myself, I'm not going to beat myself up over that anymore. Do everything I can to make it right, apologize, say, what can I do to make it right? Gone through the remorse, gone through the grieving. But eventually you're going to have to just let that go. And so I want to encourage you to do this. Are you ready for this? 2 steps. Number 1, write it down. Ask yourself, am I willing to forgive? And then make a choice. Forgive those who have hurt you and forgive yourself. Hey, this is Dr. Rob. We're going to look at this a little bit more over the next 2 days, getting into some great research. We'll be talking about that tomorrow. Until then, know this. You're loved. You're appreciated. Much love. I'm out. Hello, Leader Tribe. How in the world are you? I trust you are doing fantastic today. Hey, we're on day number 3 discussing the F word, forgiveness. Talked about the fact that this has been a major part over the years of research in Harvard Business Review and Stanford University. Specifically, there's also some Wharton studies that have come out about it. Why all the attention? Because what it does to people on the inside. Today, we're going to look at how it affects guys and ladies differently, according to the research. Tomorrow, we're kicking right off with the research study from American Express and the sales force of American Express, where they took them through some training, and they called the training Maximizing Your Talent and helping you have this great internal life that's really going to help you in sales. And what they really did is they taught them forgiveness training, and then they looked at the results, and I'm just going to tell you the results were astonishing. That's how we're going to start tomorrow. We're going to end tomorrow by looking at the ABCs, actually the ABCD of forgiveness. And so today, here's what we're going to do. You ready to go? We're jumping right into the way that guys and ladies tend to experience lack of forgiveness differently. Hey guys, if you have not forgiven somebody, what happens is it tends to slowly erode your social confidence. You become more insecure. Why is that? Well, you're holding on to something on the inside, and then all of a sudden it's like, see, that person wronged me. These people, they're out to get me. And so what you have to do is start to becoming more defensive internally. As a result of that, usually you stop contributing as much. You're not your best self, and so you tend to just shut down a little bit. Many guys already struggle in some of these areas, but if you add lack of forgiveness to any other security issues, you're going to be in trouble. Hey ladies, you're not off the hook. Holding on to an offense can cause many of your interactions to seem harsher than you really intended them to be. Sometimes you think, hey, I wasn't mad at that person. I wasn't. And everyone else around you is like, really? Well, you could have fooled me, because it sure appeared that you were mad at that person. Why? Because things become a little bit harsher. What's going on the inside? Well, in ladies' lives, when they have this lack of forgiveness going on, it's like, hey, I've got to jump in there and fend for myself and fight for my own. And so things tend to come out a little harsher for both sexes. If you will not forgive yourself and others for your past mistakes, your past sins, or the things that have been done to you, then there's a much greater chance that you're going to develop neuroticism, certainly depression and anxiety. You go, hey, not me. Yeah, I'm afraid so. You. Again, you just don't know it. What the research would show is these things are happening to you, and you say, I'm fine. You say, I'm not changing, but other people can see this in you. Let me give you a quick example. Have you ever met a person who you talk to them and they just always have to be right? I mean, they are going to be right 100% of the time. And if you don't believe it, just ask them. Or if something goes wrong, hey, that was never their fault. Where does that come from? Well, the research would show that forgiveness issues keep us from releasing the pain of our past hurts. And so what happens is we unknowingly begin to compensate for that by always needing to defend ourselves and to prove that we were right and it was the other person that was wrong. Often that comes from a lack of forgiveness and some pain that has happened on the inside to us a long time ago. Here's basically what happens. A mistake is something that we do accidentally. You might choose to put some sugar in your coffee and accidentally you poured in salt. Okay, bad cup of coffee right there. But see, that wasn't a sin. That wasn't something you willfully did. It was something that you accidentally did. What about all the times where we've done something wrong and we knew it was wrong, and we did it anyway. That's really where it goes from just this mistake over into sin, and that's where the guilt is multiplied. And so Michael's blog that he did on this, it was really, really good. I will go ahead and put a link to that in the show notes. Also, I'm going to put a link in the show notes. If nothing else, go watch this. It's a 2-minute video, incredibly powerful. There aren't even any words. It's just images. And it talks about forgiveness, and it's one of those pull at your heartstrings, unbelievable videos. So hey, let's wrap it up there today. I want to assure you that the research is not silent on this. We have a ton of research that shows if we cannot forgive other people, it is going to affect us in a very negative way. You're not going to be the best you. And you know the Leader Tribe podcast, I mean, come on, we're in this together, right? We're in this to say we want to grow, we want to become better, we want to be better leaders, we want to be better friends, we want to be better colleagues and coworkers. We're in this thing to win it. And so we've got to get over this hurdle in our life. And so as we're wrapping up today, I want to tell you that tomorrow we're launching into this. And you say, okay, I'm convinced, Dr. Rob, what do I have to do? I am willing to do this. I'm going to give you that 4 steps that you can do, 4 things that you can do, that you have to go through these steps in your own life to begin to forgive somebody else and be released from that anxiety that you have been carrying around. Hey, that's going to be tomorrow. Friends, please do me a favor, do yourself a favor, and do your friends a favor. If you know somebody who's struggling in these areas, just go to wherever you're listening to this podcast, if it's at iTunes or Google Play or on Spotify or anything else, and click the share button and just send them the link and say, hey, this guy's been talking about forgiveness and telling some pretty cool stories, and tomorrow he's talking about how we could actually do it in our own lives. Thought you might be interested in it. Anything like that would be great. Until then, know this, you're loved, you're appreciated. This is Dr. Rob. Much love. I'm out. Hello, Leader Tribe. How in the world are you? I trust you're doing well today. I am so excited about our subject matter. We've been talking about Harvard and Stanford and Wharton taking on the F word, and that word is forgiveness. But today we get down to some research and some practical how-to steps that are going to be so helpful to so many of our listeners. I hope that I look back over the years, and this is one of the most popular, most shared, most listened to, most downloaded podcasts in the history of Leader Tribe and all of the things that I have the privilege of doing around the world. Why do I hope that? Because this will set people free. This will be great, and I trust that will be come to fruition in your life. And so let's just jump right into the subject matter today. I'm going to do this sort of in 3 parts. First thing that we're really going to look at on this is a study that was done. I mean, this is amazing. It was actually done with people from American Express and salespeople within the American Express organization. The study was conducted by several PhDs, including the guy who directs the Stanford Forgiveness Project, Dr. Luskin. And basically, here's what they did. They took financial advisors and people who sold financial services for American Express. And then they put them in different groups. Some groups received training, others didn't. The training that they did really had to do with what they said was maximizing your talent. And what they would do is they would work with them. And the training for this project that was really a 1-day workshop that was attended by people, and it was supposed to help them with their emotional competence and the importance of aligning their thoughts and behaviors, and it really helped them examine areas where they were weak and then give them a little individualized plan for their continued growth. So what they did is they actually taught them principles of forgiveness. And taught them to forgive themselves and then how to forgive other people to release them from that and so that they could have a better inner life. They also taught them a few things after they had been forgiven, saying, you're going to have so much less stress. Here's some anxiety relievers in your life. And so they put some of the people through that. Others they did not put through it. And the results astonished them. The people who had gone through the training, the Maximize Your Talent participants, they ended up with an average increase in their sales of 25%. 25%. Can you imagine that? If you're getting commissions and you're in sales and all of a sudden your sales are up 25%, and the only thing that they can look back on is say it happened when they went into this opportunity helping them with trainings for forgiving, plus that was coupled with a marked decrease in stress. Overall, they reported a very large improvement in life satisfaction. Hey, that's the research, and it happened even with American Express salespeople. So then you go, okay, I believe that. What do I need to do? Well, a couple of things that they discovered when they began looking at this project was that people didn't really understand what forgiveness was. That was one of the biggest hurdles that they had to overcome. Research has shown that learning to forgive helps people hurt less. They experience less anger on the inside. They feel less stress as a result. They suffer less depression. Also, it shows that people who have learned to forgive become more hopeful and optimistic and compassionate. People learn to forgive, they become more forgiving in general. They say that their life is better. They are happier people. Hey friends, that's what you and I want. If we're going to grow as people, if we want to grow as leaders, we need to get this into our life. So then they say, well, there's all these positive benefits. Why don't more people forgive? Number one reason they discovered is no one had taught them how to forgive. So I'm going to teach you in just a moment here a little ABCD that I put together as far as how to forgive people. But first I want to tell you what forgiveness is not. Forgiveness is not condoning somebody's behavior. It's not saying, hey, you know what, it's cool, you know what. No, it wasn't cool. What they did was wrong. And so forgiveness is never condoning their offense. Let's suppose that you have a spouse, you're married, and that person goes out and has an adulterous affair on you. It doesn't mean like, yeah, that's okay. It's not okay. And so don't ever think that forgiveness is condoning something. What you're doing with the forgiveness is not condoning that behavior, but you're releasing yourself from all the pain and the guilt or whatever that's caused in your own internal life. Secondly, forgiveness is not reconciliation. Forgiveness in no way means that you need to reconcile with somebody who has treated you badly. You don't have to go to the person and ask for forgiveness in order to forgive somebody. Now, often that can help, but I've been in a situation where somebody deeply hurt me over a long period of time in an abusive situation. I went to them and I said, hey, I forgive you. And you know what their response was? Forgive me for what? I didn't do anything wrong. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Okay, that didn't go how I expected it to go. So just remember, forgiveness is not necessarily reconciliation. Another misconception about forgiveness is that it depends on whether or not the person who committed the abuse or that person who lied or that person who hurt you wants to change their ways. Hey, this is not about them changing their ways. As a matter of fact, if it depended on that and people chose to never change their ways, then they would have power over us the rest of our lives. And so forgiveness is not necessarily, don't worry about did they change or did they not change. Forgiveness has nothing to do. You can forgive somebody even though they haven't changed. And then finally, if you're going to forgive somebody for hurting you or insulting you or doing something really bad to you, that does not mean that you're also not going to receive a court judgment against them. Forgiveness and justice are not the same thing. Or it does not mean you're going to go right back to the same behavior. That might be a better way to put it. Think about this. If I have children and then they're staying with a babysitter and I find out that the babysitter was beating on them and hurting them in some way, and when I find out about that, I'm like, okay, if it was a really bad abusive situation, if I get home and their bodies are covered with welts where they got hit or something, I'm calling the police, right? The police are going to come, they're going to investigate this, they're going to do what they need to do. I can forgive that person, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to go to jail. That doesn't mean that charges aren't going to be pressed. What that means is that I am going to release them. I'm not going to try to make them feel guilty. This pain that I have internally, I'm going to release that towards them. Another example would be if you have a cheating spouse or a lying and abusive spouse, and now they're going to get a divorce, and so the person who's going to say, I forgive that lying, cheating, hurting spouse, you still might sue them for child support because you need your children to be taken care of. So just remember, forgiveness and justice are not the same thing. You can still go after justice as if you've forgiven somebody. Are you ready to look at the ABCD of forgiveness to get rid of this pain and this hurt that you've been carrying? Here's the A. Ready? Acknowledge your pain. Acknowledge your pain and the fact that you have been hurt. Hey, one research study found that divorced mothers who were not going to forgive their former spouses, guess what? They were more harsh and negative when disciplining their kids. They weren't willing to acknowledge this pain that they were carrying around in their own lives. And so I'm not going to sit here and bash on people who have been divorced and haven't forgiven their spouses. I can't even imagine that kind of pain. So please don't take it that way. Here's what I do want to say. If you want to release somebody, if you're going to be a forgiving person, you have to acknowledge that there's something to forgive. That you have pain and you've been hurt and you've had to carry that around. And so you got to watch out for people who want to give what I would call fake forgiveness. They just go like, hey, you know what? It's no big deal. I'm over it. Don't worry about it. It was a big deal. It was wrong. And if you can't admit that, then you're just out there in la-la land. You're not dealing with reality. Hey, the first one, the A, that's acknowledge. The second is B, be willing to forgive somebody. In one of the studies that they were doing, and they thought before we train people to forgive, we have to find out if you had the right tools and if you know how to do this, would you be willing to forgive this person? And if people go, nope, I don't care, no matter what happens, I'm never going to forgive them. Ooh, boy, that's a big trouble. You and I have to say, I'm going to take responsibility for my own internal health, for my own optimism, for my own future, for my own hope, and I have to release this. And so I choose to be willing to forgive. So the A is acknowledge, second is be willing to forgive, and the third is actually, the C is choose. You have to choose a different perspective. Why? Because we have rehearsed this in our minds. Hey, that pain that you've gone through, how many times have you thought about that? How many times have you justified your position? How many times have you allowed this to cement in your mind and to convince over and over and over again how bad it was and how much it hurt? And so you have to choose somewhere in there to have a different perspective. This is in no way letting someone off the hook. But let me give you a quick example. There was one story of a lady who, she had a sister, and her sister stole a Christmas card that had $50 in it. When the sister found out, she was furious. And so she confronts her sister, she's yelling at her, and her sister's like, I'm so sorry, I don't know why I keep doing this. I'm just in trouble, and I don't know what to do. And all of a sudden, she was able to identify with her and say, hey, that doesn't make it okay, but I can forgive you. Let's help you deal with whatever this thing is that was going on. So that was a kind of a cool story. There's lots of other stories, though, of people who have been hurt by their bosses or others, and they just thought, the guy is a total jerk. But he's dealing with some stuff in his life that he doesn't know how to get over, and that's coming out as a spewed hatred towards other people. And that's one of the reasons, friends, why we need to learn to forgive. And so choose a different perspective on this. You have to do that. So acknowledge the pain, be willing to forgive, have to choose a different perspective so you don't play that same loop in your mind over and over again. And then the D is decide to receive the benefits of forgiveness, the blessings of forgiveness. Decide that there is a silver lining and you're going to get that. Decide that as I am releasing that sin, that offense, as I am forgiving that person, I am choosing something else. Instead of that vitriolic hatred, I'm choosing into my life to enjoy the benefits of this forgiveness. So friends, a little recap here. First thing we looked at is studies that have shown, that have proven that when we forgive other people, our lives get better. We become more of the person that we were meant to be. And we learned that what forgiveness is not. And if we think forgiveness is condoning the sin or letting somebody off the hook, no, those are misconceptions. Let's not go there. But there are some specific steps that we can take. I've labeled them as the ABCD of forgiveness. As a matter of fact, those will be in the show notes. And then finally, what if you can't forgive yourself? In the show notes, I'll have a little article from Redbook Magazine. At the very bottom of that, fantastic little thoughts about how to forgive yourself and the benefits of that as well. Hey, this is Dr. Rob. We've been looking at forgiveness all week because it's such an important topic. Thanks for journeying with me in this. Tomorrow on Friday will be the compilation, all 4 episodes together. That will take about 40 minutes if you'd like to listen to that. Otherwise, if you're a person of faith and you'd like to listen to a little motivational 5-minute thing on Sunday, listen to the Sunday edition. Apart from that, we will be back. Hey, this is Dr. Rob. Much love. I'm out.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Leader Tribe podcast. For all the free bonuses and growth articles, join the tribe. It's free. Just head on over to leadertribe.com to sign up, and we'll see you tomorrow for another daily dose of growth.